Hello and welcome into the Fog.net podcast. My name is Michael Swain, the Kansas beat writer for 24/7 Sports. Hope everyone has had a great week so far. We're getting close, really close to Kansas at Illinois, but there's a lot going on this weekend. So we'll use this podcast to discuss some of the latest with KU basketball recruiting and also give some final thoughts heading into KU's Week 2 contest at Illinois. We can start off on the basketball recruiting front, and then we'll wrap up with some of the final thoughts on Illinois and some other things going on around the contest. So on the basketball front, we're into the busy part of the year for high school recruiting. On Wednesday, college basketball coaching staffs could go out on the road and go and start and see high school recruits in person. This is really important for coaching staffs like KU to go out and not only see guys play and see them play more, but also get to just show interest. And so KU had a couple coaches spread across the country. We had the update posted on our VIP board on it would have been Wednesday morning about where KU's at. We've got some early intel on where they're going to be next week. But right now, it's a really busy time for the KU basketball coaches. They've got to manage the ongoing practices going on campus, official visitors coming to campus, and now they've got to spread out across the country and go and recruit. So as for the latest with some news with some KU prospects that recently visited, KU had Eric Reiby, a four-star center. He's originally from Germany, lives now in Washington, D.C. He was on campus for an official visit last weekend. If you want to see the comments he gave to us about the visit, what stood out, what it was like being in Lawrence, we've got that story posted up on fog.net. But the development this week was that Eric decided to cancel a pair of visits, a visit to Kentucky, which makes sense now that Kentucky landed a center, Malachi Moreno. Obviously, you're not going to have two highly ranked centers probably going to the same spot. So he decided to cancel that visit, and then he canceled his North Carolina visit. Now you see him rescheduling some other visits. Things have been shuffled. His Indiana visit's been moved up. The Oregon visit potentially could be moved up, but this is one where you see prospects move recruitments and move their visits around the time of a visit, right? That's typically a pretty good sign. And one of the things I found really interesting is the fact that, when Reiby was on his visit, he's able to sit and watch practice. And well, what does KU have right now? It's a 7-foot center who is incredibly skilled, has a good touch from the perimeter, good feel around the basket. And when you watch, Reiby play, that's exactly what you see. I've got some clips here for our YouTube audience of some international play for him, but he's someone that I think in terms of his overall skill set is probably a lot closer to a Hunter Dickinson than he is maybe a Udoka Azubuike or someone of that ilk. So a really highly skilled player, and something that, Eric talked about with me was the fact that he was able to sit and watch how KU practices with Hunter Dickinson and how they use him and the ways that they are pushing Hunter to get better. And I think KU did a good job of maybe showcasing the ways that if Reiby were to pick KU, that KU would be able to help him and help him develop into a player that, you look at the skill set and it fits that of a modern basketball player, especially with what they ask for, at the center position nowadays, where, it's not going to be just pick and roll heavy, where he's going to be a lob threat and that's kind of it. He's a guy that can hurt you a lot of different ways. And so it's a really interesting skill set for KU. You compare that to someone like Floyd Badunga, who KU got last year, who's more of your 6'9", really long wingspan, incredible standing reach, hyper athletic, really good shot blocker, not the most skilled offensively, and not the type of guy that's going to space the floor. Well, now you look at someone like Reiby, and if KU is able to get him on board at some point later this fall, you can see the contrast there where you've got kind of different skills for different games and at different times. So it is a really interesting dynamic for KU, and Reiby definitely fits that mold of the not super maybe hyper athletic like Flory, but someone that does have decent movement skills, but is really going to hurt you with the overall skill set that he has, shooting the basketball, as a passer, as a rebounder, and all of those things. So his recruitment is really interesting. Obviously, we want to keep an eye on at the moment. We'll keep you updated on the latest with him on the VIP board, with the latest going on with him and obviously other prospects. Now, there's a big visitor coming on campus this weekend for KU, and it's interesting that, we're going to talk about it in a second, but the number one player in the 2020 2025 recruiting class is set to be on campus. And yet it doesn't necessarily feel like there's a ton of buzz, and it doesn't feel like there's a ton of excitement about it. And I think that's just because of the way high school basketball recruiting is going these days, where things are slow first and foremost. So it is not like football recruiting, right? For folks that have been around the podcast for a few months in the summertime, it's a visit weekend happens, commitments start rolling in. It is not like that with basketball. And so for a recruitment like AJ DeBonsta, who is the number one player in the 2025 class, he's someone that is taking a lot of visits, right? You can look at it here for our YouTube audience, but he saw K-State last week. He sees KU this weekend, in what is it, 2 weeks? He sees Carolina the week after. He sees Alabama, then Baylor, and then BYU. It's one of these situations where a lot of visits going on. He's a guy that is playing on the EYBL circuit. He's been a Nike guy for most of his basketball career. So it's one of those situations where, all right, the signs maybe don't necessarily align for a Kansas type of guy, where if you look at someone like Darren Peterson, for example, he's linked to Adidas, right? His previous high school, Huntington Prep, was Adidas. His current high school, Prolific Prep, is Adidas. He's got an Adidas high school deal as well. Like, those signs look pretty good. Now with DeBonsta, it's different, right? It's a lot more Nike centered. And I think, but in this day and age, you also can't really rule anything out because things are wild with the NIL landscape. So, what makes AJ such a special prospect? I'll pull up the scouting report here from Adam Finkelstein, who does a great job of scouting these guys and really gives good scouting reports. And he calls him the best high school basketball prospect out there. Someone, 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, really good size for someone that is just now entering his senior year of high school. A really, really athletic player. You watch some of his high school tapes of whether it be on the EYBL circuit, other places, just a crazy athletic player who you could think about, if you want to dream a little bit in a Bill Self system, where you think about him getting downhill and the ways that Self is able to allow wings to get downhill. You think about guys in the past like a Jalen Wilson and the way that Self created driving angles for him with the way that KU ran its offense, right? You can kind of get yourself excited about a player like that in that system. Again, is it super likely? I'd probably say no, but never say never. We'll have some more intel posted this weekend before he starts his visit on where things stand with KU and what maybe a pathway could look like for KU maybe to be able to get things done. But he's someone that, again, incredible recruiting profile, offers from everywhere. You look at his rating, right? It's not very often on 24/7 that you see the 100 ratings. I think Andrew Wiggins is an example of someone in the past that had that type of rating. And so it's a big time prospect. He'll be on campus, I believe, starting on Friday all the way through Sunday. You look at some of the other visits KU has had. Typically, they like to line these up with home football games, but KU's can have more prospects on campus next weekend. And this was a weekend that worked where, DeBonsta can be the center of attention for this KU coaching staff, where he, his dad, and everyone around him can get a feel for what it's like to be in Lawrence, spend some time around KU, hear what the KU coaches have to say about their vision for him and what it would look like if he decides he wants to be a Jayhawk in the end. All right. I think that's what I got for basketball recruiting wise. Obviously, we'll keep you all up to date on our VIP board. I'll keep plugging it. Like, that's where we're cranking out updates with basketball recruiting, high school football recruiting. Had some a story up earlier this week on Joshua Rushing, a high school football wide receiver kid from Oklahoma. Got a KU offer after his visit. You're starting to see these offers come out. I'm turning on my Twitter right now, and all of a sudden I just see a lot of offers being extended by KU. It's that time of year, right? High school football's back for KU. They're talking to a lot of kids now that the season's back. If you want to look, typically Tuesday nights are going to be big nights for KU, talking to high school kids. That's what it's been in the past. And so far this year, there have been a lot of offers extended on one of the first Tuesdays of the football season. So obviously we'll keep you all tuned up to date. We'll keep you tuned in on the VIP board there. But let's transition now to some football thoughts. Look, I'm fired up for this Illinois game. I'll be headed down on Friday to get to Champaign for this one. A really interesting dynamic here is the fact that it's a sellout, and it's the first sellout for Illinois since 2016. And it is incredible to think that if you would have said 2017, 2018, 2019, that, hey, Kansas football is going to go on the road to Illinois and the game's going to sell out in part because of Kansas, I think you would have said, oh man, you're pretty crazy. But that's where things are, where Kansas is a team now that people respect and want to go see because it's an exciting product. But B, I think fans feel the need to, hey, it's a big game. It's probably going to be a toss-up game. Go and support. So I think it's really interesting to see how opposing fan bases now view Kansas football. Now for the game itself, night game, that always presents some difficulties where, someone Lance Leipold talked about last year when KU was opening the season with, I think it was 3 straight night games. Yes, it was, because they opened on weeknights and then the game at Nevada. The trouble that you find with road night games is keeping everybody locked in throughout the course of the day, because you're not in a familiar confine, right? Where KU, if it's a night home game, they're at the same hotel they've always been at. They know the routine and stuff. And so now it's about transitioning that routine to the road. I'll have a story up on Saturday talking a little bit about this. Talked to Sevion Morrison, DJ Withers about this. And they talked about the fact that it's all about kind of staying in the routine that you have, but also trying to get out and get some daylight. So you're not cooped up in the hotel all day. You're not in your bed all day. They have the players up moving around throughout the course of the day so that they stay fresh, they stay locked in, and there's not a bunch of lulls. And so KU will probably head to the stadium, if it's a 6:00 kick, usually about 2 hours, hour and a half before, something about that. So there's a lot of time to, keep everyone locked in, have your final meetings, your final walkthrough. So that always presents a challenge. And that's something I'll be looking for here is, how does KU start this game? Are they going to be able to start on the front foot? Because this is a very much a game for me where it feels game state oriented. If KU gets down early, Illinois is able to try and run the ball, and they've got the crowd in it, that's a recipe for a really tough night. And I don't, care how good a team is. It's not easy to overcome something like that. You've got to be a really good team. Now, I'm of the opinion that KU is a really good team, so I would never rule something out like that. But it's one of these where I think KU starting fast is going to be super important. Take the crowd out of it. Can you get an early takeaway? Can you get an early big play that can maybe take some air out of the stadium, especially if it is a sellout? And so I think that's going to be a huge key for KU. I think something I'm really interested in looking at a little bit more when the game starts is, how is Illinois going to use Caden Fagan? He's a really interesting running back prospect at 6'3", 250. Probably one of the more physical running backs KU might play all year. You look at the Big 12, it's not necessarily super big and bruising running backs. It's a lot of guys that look like Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, guys that are a little bit more on the twitchy side, make you miss. Fagan's more of a Daniel Highshaw, if you will, someone that wants to run right through you, and he's got some good top-end speed. How does KU go about trying to stop him? That's something I'll bring up a little bit more in depth and talk about some scheme things maybe KU can do. That'll be in a VIP preview I'll have out on Monday. I wish. On Friday. So another thing I want to look at here too is Jaylen Daniels. Something I thought really interesting that he talked about, it would have been probably prior to the Lindenwood game, is how college football has changed him. We talked about the fact that, he is now a guy that doesn't want to use his legs so much. He wants to maybe stay in the pocket. College football has made him more of a pocket passer. He's not someone that, if you remember the Houston game or the West Virginia game in 2022 when Jaylen Daniels is running rampant in both of those road games, I'm not sure how much we're going to see of that anymore, because Jaylen Daniels is so important to Kansas that you want to keep him not only as fresh as possible, but a guy that, so he doesn't take hits, so he's not having to nurse a shoulder or something like that throughout the course of a game or throughout the course of a season. So how does Kansas approach the option game and the running aspect of it with Jaylen? Of course, you'll see him scramble, right? How many times did you see that in the Illinois game last year, where someone like Johnny Newton's able to get penetration against KU's offensive line, but then Jaylen has the quick twitch acceleration to get away from him? I think you'll still see that from Jaylen Daniels because that's who he is. But we haven't seen anything so far from Jeff Grimes in the option game. And so how does that dynamic work in a game like this when it is a big road game, when you do want to hit the ground running in this season and build the momentum and build the confidence over the course of the first few weeks, so that when the heart of the season hits and you've got your tougher games against, a K-State on the road, an Iowa State at home, a BYU on the road, that the team has confidence that's been built over the course of non-conference play in the first couple games of conference play. So I think those are just some dynamics I'll be really interested to see. Obviously, there have also been some issues in college football with the tablets and the in-helmet communication. You can look at KU's season opener against Lindenwood. The tablets on the sideline weren't working for a little bit of the first half, and there wasn't replay in the first half. That's an issue. You can look at the Penn State-West Virginia game where their in-helmet communication went out, and they had to switch to doing a lot more signals. Now, KU is a team that uses a wristband, so all coaches would have to do then is transition back to doing signals, give the quarterback the play call, which is just a number that then he flips up and is able to read. On defense, KU already does signal a good amount because of tempo that teams can use sometimes. So it won't be an issue, but can those things kind of go out without a hitch in a road environment for KU? So those are just some of my thoughts. Obviously, stay tuned to the website. Got plenty of content coming your way. I'll be there in person, so we'll have our post-game video for you. We'll have a post-game podcast on Sunday, most likely Sunday night, because I will be driving most of Sunday back to KC. And then, as always, make sure you're liking these videos, subscribing to the channel. It's fun to see the channel grow. It's fun seeing all the comments coming in for this game, especially. And so make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, dropping comments. If you're listening to this on the podcast platform of your choice, please leave a rating and review. Those go a long way in helping us reach a whole new batch of Kansas fans. And that's what we're trying to do, is get as much of this Kansas football content coverage, things like that, to as many KU fans as possible. So thanks always for listening. We'll have plenty of content and coverage for you coming from Champaign this weekend.